Okay. So the three of us are here and Francine is with us. Is it time to start or not?
Yes, you can go ahead and start.
Okay, well, I'm going to do a real quick overview of the history of TexELT. 12 years ago, after many years as a university professor and having gone through getting a doctorate and then being asked to publish and realizing that there were complications to that, you pick up the journal that you think's a wonderful journal and you submit a paper to it and you get no response, even because it's one of the big journals that everybody submits stuff to, and they don't really plan to help you publish. They just want to pick and choose and then publish the same 5 people they've been publishing for 20 years. And so it occurred to me that to have an online journal, you really don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to charge people a fee. And if you have some volunteers who are good editors, you can basically put on a journal without a lot of expense. And so that's when I proposed to the TexELT and to the TexTFL 5 board that we could create our own online peer-reviewed journal using our own members to produce it. And I got some good help from a number of people. And so that's how TexELT came to be. Over the years, things have changed because the publishing world has changed in the last 12 years. There's more emphasis on practical kinds of things and on immediate information. And so we have shifted with the times. When we started out, we were pretty much assuming people were going to send us their scaled down dissertation to publish. And that is pretty tedious to prepare because the format of a dissertation is not the format that our English teachers, that are our members, are necessarily eager to read. It tends to be very repetitive and rather tedious to read. And so over time, we've shifted some of our priorities. And I don't know, Lana, you want to talk about some of that?
Shifting priorities.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have experience with that with your good job.
I know, boy, are we shifting.
Yeah.
All right. So good morning, everybody. I'm Lana Sloan, and I'm the publications copy coordinator, and I am in service to Dr. Rita and to anyone who submits. So I thought I'd talk today a little bit about what's different about TexELT, and so Rita's already mentioned a few of those things, and in that, one, we don't charge, and 2, that we're all volunteer. So we do all of this because of our love of teachers and our love of teaching and our love of getting the word out about all the good things that teachers are doing. So I thought of 3 things that I'll sort of talk about this morning. So one is we solicit very varied formats to promote participation. So we're not, as Rita just said, we're not structured with one type of scholarly writing. We're not, we don't lean toward the traditional. We have varied formats. 2, we cultivate graduate student participation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Both Rita and I work with dissertation students, and they're encouraged to publish, and so we hold that high on our priority list, that if students submit, that we're going to give them every consideration too, as well as our professional authors. 3, on our team, we consider the editing and revision and and just discussion of the topic, a collaborative process. So we work collaboratively with our authors. We go back and forth, just like you would when if you were preparing this paper for your class or something, and you're asking for feedback from a friend or a family member. We're sort of your friends and family members as you go back and forth, and we make suggestions and you change things, and then we make some more suggestions. Sometimes you make suggestions in addition. So it's a back and forth process. It's not, you don't have to feel uncomfortable in the process. It's just a normal way that we work in order to produce or help you produce the highest quality article you can produce. And then I'm going to go over just some things in top 10 scholarly writing tips that I think are important to think about in this changing environment of scholarly academic writing. So no matter what the climate or the trend is, the mission of scholarly or academic writing or publishing is to provide scholarly practitioners opportunities to contribute to the knowledge base of their professional fields. So TexELT serves everyone from kindergarten teachers to higher education. And so we have a wide audience, primarily teachers, but others too, who are from all of those different levels of education. The language that people are using in academic writing and scholarly writing, and I think this just goes to all of us being in the information age, and all of us worrying about, the access to the tons of information that's available, trying to teach students to paraphrase instead of plagiarize, and all of those things. I think that is causing the trend toward keeping it simple and using paraphrasing and learning to work from someone else's work in order to achieve something new. So the language is becoming less formal, it's less rigid. Sentence structure is not as complex. Paragraphs are not as long. And so all of these changes are taking place. And one of the primary places that you can see these trends happening is in the actual dissertation process. So ordinarily a dissertation would be like a 5-chapter, cut and dried to the point kind of paper, right? And so there's more emphasis now on dissertations in practice. There's emphasis on actually having students write 3 or 4 scholarly articles for publication and then putting an introduction and conclusion with them. There's more emphasis on action research, which especially appeals to educators, although action research has become so popular that it's infiltrating all fields now. So all fields are trying to do research and related to their workplace environment. So all of these things are happening, and all of those, I feel like because of Dr. Rita, we were ahead of the game with some of this, because she recognized early on that our traditional kinds of papers were declining. And so, had us talk about what else could we do in order to encourage people to write and to publish. And so that's how we came to solicit varied formats to promote participation. So the kinds of articles that we accept now are, we have categories of articles. So practical perspectives is one of those categories. We launched it in 2018, and really most of our articles at this point are these types of articles. And these are articles in which the author describes a practical application, usually in the classroom, or that could be implemented in the classroom, and then they support their implementation and their practice with research-based. So it's more, it's not as scientific as what a traditional paper would be. And it provides more direction to people who would want to implement the activity or the classroom practice. So it's, to me, it's the best. I enjoy this, reading these, and I enjoy working with the teachers and authors on these, because I feel like they truly contribute to, you know, teachers. We know as teachers, we want something we can use today and tomorrow, right now, right? We don't want to wait a long time to get this implemented. So it's those kinds of articles, and they're really nice to read and great to use in classrooms. And then Dr. Rita added research reports last year. And the research reports are to provide our grad students and others, if other professional authors, if they want to do this, to share the major points of a dissertation or other kinds of research in a reduced format, just to acquaint the audience with what's happening in the research world and what they're saying about, for example, literacy or some other area that's very important in today's world. The third category is critical reviews of textbooks, teaching materials, or teacher preparation texts. And these are just basically book reviews. And they're book reviews that would appeal to our audience. So it can include popular books and children's literature. And Rita is an expert at this, and she contributes often with these types of critical reviews. Rita, would you like to share just a little bit about what you've done in this area? Because you are the guru for this with the journal.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd say guru, but I did in the last journal that sort of thing, because I enjoy young adult or teenager literature. I think it's interesting. I enjoy reading it. I don't really like adult language and literature. It's, I'm not that old yet. I'm not old enough to read adult stuff. And so I like reading what is aimed at 13, 14-year-olds. And if it moves fast and has lots of action and a lot of cliffhangers, I enjoy that. It's fun. It's much better than what's on TV, most of which is, you know, you can predict what it's going to do, and it's often not very pleasant. And I get tired. I mean, the evening news is about all the negativity I can handle. Once a day, watching the 10 o'clock news is about all the negativity that I can manage. I read a few newsletters online that, you know, deal with what's going on in the world and how horrible it is, but I kind of like to be away from that. And so I like to be away from that by reading things that you might read aloud to your students if you're a classroom teacher, or that you might want to encourage them to read. And so the last journal, what I did for my editorial article, so to speak, was to review some of these books that had 12, 13, 14-year-old heroines or heroes doing exciting things, not necessarily in the real world, sometimes totally fantasy, sometimes partially real, and talking about that we need to think about that kind of literature for our students, because we have so many students now who have come from war-torn areas, who have experienced various kinds of political and social violence in their lives. And they need to see a light at the end of the tunnel. They need to see the possibility of overcoming all of this negativity. And so that was what I focused on for my article. Was, here's this one. I like this one. You know, this one offers something else. This one is kind of depressing, but it's very informative. And that's really all I did, was I just book reviewed kids' books, because as teachers, we need those recommendations. I mean, my blog is basically newsletters that I receive from all kinds of sources. One of which, she always posts all the new Newbery winners and the Caldecott winners and the books that have, that have achieved awards. But knowing that it was given an award doesn't mean that I would want to read it or would want to read it to my students. And so I tried to kind of go beyond that. I don't know, I'm blathering on here. One thing I wanted to mention is that because we're TexELT, some people might get the impression that we're only interested in things that are immediately in Texas. And that has never been the case. Even from the very first issues, we have accepted articles of teachers who were teaching English in Denmark, or teaching English in Saudi Arabia, or other places in the world, because ESL teaching is still ESL teaching no matter where it is. And some of our teachers here in North Texas have been all over the world, or will go all over the world, and will have students from all over the world. And so we don't limit the kinds of articles we're interested in to things that have to do with Fort Worth. We look much further abroad than just our local area, because that's what ESL teachers do. My current group of students in a new course that I just started have been everywhere and done everything. They're amazing. They're getting a master's in teaching English as a second language or as a foreign language. And they've already had the kinds of experiences that one might assume a person would only attain after 40 years. And they're younger than I am. They're in their 20s or their 30s, because the opportunities exist. And so I just wanted to clarify that we're local, but we're not parochial, if that makes sense. And I wanted to introduce Jayashree. She is our past president, and she kind of backed off of some of her role with our peer review panel to be president of TexTSOL 5. But we have always depended on her as the last pair of eyes that looks for the commas. She's such an expert with precise language and grammatically correct language. And so she has always had that very important role for us. So Jay, what would you have to say?
It was a privilege to work with you always, Rita. So you're an expert. I kind of, but I want to tell if kind of, who's Francine, if she's interested in publishing or something like that. We are basically a kind-hearted group of people who really want to help teachers to publish. So we usually look at articles, whether that articles have themes appealing to readership. One, the other one is, at least in a good way, the topic has been elaborated and it is publishable. And the rest of it, like content-wise or mechanic-wise, like if the writing needs help, we're ready to help to polish it and then refine it or something like that without changing your ideas and things like that. And then we make it ready for publication. So it is a kind of long process. Maybe somebody may look at, oh, it's published, kind of, but behind the scene, like we all work, put in many hours of work, sometimes reading and correcting it, and then somebody else will read and then, don't change this one, this is what it means, and things like that. So we're ready to help any teacher or anybody who wants to kind of, publish, and we are willing to help them in any way we can. We don't kind of blatantly discard somebody, this is not publishable, like if you do these things, it can be publishable. That's what Rita sends email. And then if the teacher is willing to work on that, then, we are willing to help the person. So we are all for you publishing and, get your name out or get your ideas out. So I've been very happy that I worked with Rita for so many years, on this. And then that's how we started this, and then went big. And it's so interesting, how it happened, like when Rita was saying 2007 or something like that, or 6, I don't know. We went to TexELT 5 conference in the business meeting, and they were announcing that they're looking for an editor. So I stood up and said, I like to be an editor. I like to apply for this job or something like that. Then I saw Rita immediately standing by me and said, she's interested too. Very interesting. That's how we met. And I said, okay, Rita, you be editor, I'll be co-editor, kind of stuff. It's very interesting. From then on, it developed more and more, better and better. And Rita is it's so much ideas, and she puts in also a lot of time in refining it and publishing it. So the credit mostly goes to her. So
the credit goes to the whole team, because
Yeah.
everybody does their part, and especially Lana now as our content editor.
Yeah.
She's the one who, what I used to say of our previous content editor who didn't go away mad, but her husband had retired and she decided she wanted to fully retire too. She'd done enough. And so she left us, and we were lucky enough to convince Lana to take over her responsibilities. But her job is, as I say, it's to see the statue in the stone. It's to see what something can become, and then help guide that to happen.
Yes.
And what we do, and a procedure that I instituted from the start based on my own experiences as an academic and someone trying to publish, and someone knowing what it felt like to have your work criticized, the feedback comes through me. And that way, if Jay or Lana had a bad day and said, oh God, this thing sucks, I can change the wording and say, this needs a little bit more information about such and such. And so my role is not to do a lot of the editing, but rather to funnel feedback to authors and to receive the content back from the author and pass it on to whoever it needs to be seen by. And so that's kind of the way we work.
Yeah, we are certainly grateful that Alana accepted the position, and then having been doing such a wonderful job. Certainly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, you couldn't have written a curriculum vitae to be the kind of content editor we needed without using Lana's for, as the template, because she's edited and written and developed content in so many ways at so many levels that she's just way beyond an expert. She's my mentor. I have learned from her, and she guided me when I first wrote a course for ACE, where she and I both teach. She was the person who guided me to create a good linguistics course. And I continue to look to her as my guide.
Thank you very much. My cheeks are turning red.
Oh, it's okay.
So I'm going to just piggyback a little bit off of what these two wonderful people said. One is the journal is very diverse, both in authorship and in content. And like Rita said, we've had recent articles from Korea and Turkey and all over. So it's very diverse. And then I'm going to go back to there was a fourth category of writing articles that we accept, and that's a research synthesis for application. And this is a research-based article in which the author relates best practices that are being used or are emerging, so that we stay current on what's best practices for the classroom. Number 2 was that we cultivate graduate student participation. And again, I attribute this to Rita because she is such a wonderful instructor for her graduate students, and she motivates them to write. I try to motivate mine to write too, because writing is my thing. So I want them to be good writers, and so I nurture them to become better authors. So there's a lot of reasons for why they should attempt to publish or to become published. So one is that they spend so much time writing, researching and writing, this long 5-chapter dissertation, and they basically dedicate months, sometimes years, to doing it. And so it's just, it's sort of a letdown. I mean, you're done, and now what to do with this dissertation? So we like to give them an outlet where they can, bring their writing, synthesize their dissertation and bring it public, and give them some credit for contributing to the field. And so that's one reason. And then it also provides real world opportunity, a connection between the classroom and the workplace environment. It also gives them something that they can put into their resume. So many employers now are looking for actual applicants who have experience and who can function well in a job or a career. And unfortunately, a lot of the employer surveys, they're disappointed because they don't feel like students have the practical application they need in order to be really good employees. So anything that we can do to help them make that connection between, education and the workplace is what we're trying to do, and also to give them that opportunity to share all of this hard work that they've spent all this time doing. And then 3, Rita touched on this and Jay both touched on this, and that's working collaboratively with the authors to develop high quality submissions. So our process is, as Rita said, it's a very iterative process. It's a very nurturing, comfortable process, I feel like, because we see ourselves with the author as a collaborative team, as I said earlier, trying to help that author produce the highest quality product that they can for the journal. I enjoy it very much. I know Rita and Jay do too, and it's very rewarding when we get that final issue out and it's all colorful and beautiful and online, and everybody can see everybody's work and start commenting on it. It's very rewarding. So we encourage you or anyone that you know who would be interested in having something published to come see us. And then I was just going to offer, let's see, I think I got about a few minutes left, just a few of what I think are important things about submitting to the journal and just making the process a little bit smoother. One is we do in the journals, and the journals are available online on the website, so you can see everything. You can see Rita's article on the books. You can see I wrote an article, a welcome article on the changes in scholarly and academic writing in the last issue. So you can see our writing, you can see all of the wonderful things that the authors shared for, practice in the classroom. So the journal guidelines are published there. They're very straightforward. They address what Jay mentioned a while ago, and that is that the most important thing and the number one question that we ask ourselves is, will our audience find this proposal or this article of interest when and will they read it? And so that's like the number one criteria, and then there's other criteria listed there, but it's all very clear, numbered, what you do, and it's pretty open, actually. And then 2 is practical application. Anytime that you can take that research and extend it to the classroom or your work environment and show other people how to do that and how you did it, that's a plus. Research, number 3, using the research to support the application and to support the practice so that it lends itself to best practices. Very important in the information age and becoming more important, not only in academic writing, but across the board, is clarity. People want things to be very clear, easy to read, not take a lot of time. They're time conscious. So all of those things are important. Planning, I'm still sort of old school when it comes to planning. I think an outline is a great way to start, even though you're going to change it. I always do, right, Rita? I never leave my outline the way it was. It always changed, but at least I've got down all the big ideas that I'm hoping to share. Messy draft, my draft, I wouldn't show my draft to anybody. It looks awful. I copy and paste and cut and move around and drag things here, and I'll write a few sentences at the top and move down to the middle and then go back up to the top when something else comes to my mind. So it's all over the place. Don't be afraid to be messy when you're getting your ideas down. The important thing is to get your ideas on the paper. So, if you're I used to be this. I'm not this anymore. I used to just sit and stare at my old typewriter, hoping that inspiration would somehow write the first paragraph. It never happened. So I just started putting ideas on the paper, and I like that way better because then I feel like I'm making progress. Sentence construction, less emphasis on complicated, complex sentences and more straight to the point sentences, shorter paragraphs, like not more than 12 sentences or maybe a word limit of 200 words, just so that, the indent gives the reader a little bit of a break before you go to your next thought. Active voice rather than passive. So Rita wrote an article, not the article was written by Rita, and then always proofread it, edit. And one thing that I did when I was younger, and I continue to do it to this day, is I read it, whatever I write, I read it aloud about 2 or 3 times, because every time I read it, I hear something that I don't catch when I'm reading silently. And so I think it's a good practice to read it aloud. Some people don't want to take the time, but I recommend reading aloud. And let me see, I wanted to say that I think that scholarly writing, academic writing, they're natural for teachers and natural for educators, not just teachers, but all educators, because we have a tendency to want to move toward action. It's like what I was talking about a while ago when I said we want something we can use now, today, tomorrow, we want it now. And we get really excited when we get that, right? When we go to something, we say, I can use this now, but this fits right in. So we have a desire to improve our practice. It's sort of innate in our being. It's built into us. We're always wanting to make it better and to make it better for the students that we're serving. And so we sort of gravitate toward authentic problems and opportunities for improvement. So all of these things, when we have all of these characteristics, then one way to pour those out or share those with others is through our scholarly and academic writing. It's also a wonderful professional venue. We're able to demonstrate our professionalism through our scholarly and academic writing. So again, we encourage you to share your writing with us and to give us the opportunity to publish your work. Rita, do you have anything else to say, or Jay?
I don't think
I don't
so.
know if they want any
over time.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think somebody has questions, probably it's time to answer, I guess. So
Okay.
Francine, you have any questions you want to ask us? unmute yourself.
Francine, you're muted. Oh, there you go.
Okay. No, she's still not unmuted.
Mm-mm.
She did. Oh, she's not,
She unmuted for a second.
but I couldn't hear it, yeah.
Francine, could you check your mute again? Because we couldn't hear you. Oh, it's not allowing you to unmute.
Oh. Maybe that's a setup, I think.
Oh, maybe that's, well,
Mary
you,
can do something, Mary.
Mary, are you with us?
Let me see what.
Okay.
So, oh, there was a question, Francine, you asked a question about page limit or suggested length. We don't, in our submission guidelines, we don't really specify a length. So it's really up to you. I think we've had some, Rita, we've had some like maybe 7 pages, 5, 6 or 7 pages up to.
That's a fairly common size.
Right.
The big journals, the ones that everybody thinks they want to publish in, that they'll never get published in because 7 people already have that journal covered. They publish the same 7 authors with slight variations over and over. They turn in 20-page articles, but for our purposes, we rarely need that much. That's probably a lot more than we need. And recently, I recruited a couple of former students to write in this last journal. And one of them, she was hesitant about doing it. And I said, the results of your dissertation are seriously important. I mean, the world needs to know that your daughters who go to this school where they're learning in Spanish, even though your family are not Spanish speakers, and those children are outperforming children in the regular curriculum. That's information that needs to be known and it needs to be shared. And so, you know, I don't want to rewrite your whole dissertation, but you need to give us a 5-page summary of the important ideas. And another former student, I had received a book sent to me by the author of the book on methods for teaching adults in EFL, asking me to review it. And I said, well, you know, I haven't taught ESL or EFL to adults overseas for 50 years. And granted, there was a time when I knew how to do it or thought I knew how to do it, but I'm not the person to review this. And so I contacted one of my former doctoral students. I wasn't his chair. I was just his committee member, but he always thought I was his chair. He just treated me like I was his chair anyway. And I said, you know, you're going to have to review this because you're doing this. You're the one who knows whether these strategies are good strategies or not. And so that's how that book review came about in the last issue. And it was kind of tricky because Dawson was back and forth between Japan and his father, who was very ill in Georgia. And I had to try to get the book to him and then get him to very quickly write that review. But I wanted to be considerate of the author who sent me the book, but I wanted it reviewed by somebody who would feasibly use it or who would understand why it should or shouldn't be used. And so that's just another example. I think we're over time. Francine, if you had a question we didn't get answered.
That was her question.
It was length.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, you know, if you send us 3 pages and we think it's good, but it's not all there, we'll tell you what to add, you know.
Well,
Or if you
like,
send us 20 pages and we think it's too much, we'll tell you what to cut. We
and
don't
some-
have a page limit. We don't publish the journal physically. So we don't have to count how many pages we're going to use up because it's all on the internet. So we have a lot of flexibility.
and sometimes people send in a shorter article version in order just for us to see, to tell them if it's of interest and things like that, to give them some feedback early on. So we don't, like Rita said, we don't specify the page limit. We don't want to limit you and restrict you from saying what you want to say. So that was our only question, guys. So
Well, I don't know whether Mary is still with us as our moderator or whether
Yeah.
we're moderating ourselves. I think we're over
Still
time.
there.
So.
yeah, I've got 10:13, so we've got 2 minutes. Francine, do you have another question? Anybody else have another question? We do encourage you to submit though, because it's especially rewarding when you see it, because the journal turns out really nicely. Rita is in charge of the final look and the final journal, and it turns out really nice.
Sometimes, like some of the simple things that you do in the classroom can be written as a paper, because when they submit, it's so interesting. Oh my God, I can do this in my classroom or something like that, like so interesting. Sometimes, not so much support from other authors and things like this in a bibliography, but, like it's what you do in the classroom can also can be explained and, like can be helpful to other teachers. So.
Right, and never underestimate what you do in the classroom when you're trying, like, that's another thing that I think as teachers we do. We're always diagnosing and figuring out a different way to do something with students, and then it works great and everything goes great, and then we move on, or we continue to do that in our practice, but we don't share it. And so pretty soon though, someday, I guarantee you this has happened to me, someone will share something that was exactly what you did, 10 years before. So you need to get it out there and get credit for it, and get it on your resume and let other people use it, because that's really, teachers are the ones who know how to do it. Yeah, do it right.
I guess I was looking at the clock wrong. I was not realizing how much time we were supposed to have, and I was
Now it's time, I think, 10:15.
So now it's 10:15.
Yeah.
So I guess we should leave everyone here, right?
I guess so.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed. Yeah.